Greetings and gratitude. Today's two songs, Therapy and Alone with Myself by Citizen Soldier from their album ICU from 2023, are lyrically candid and confronting. I chose to analyze these as a double feature because they carry through a similar theme. Citizen Soldier is really good at writing rhythmic conversations, and they're very blunt. I look forward to returning to these lyricists several times over the upcoming months to see where those conversations take us. As always, I am not trying to or claiming to speak on behalf of the lyricists or say with certainty what they meant. We are here to look at possibilities based on the results of their writing. The band's website says that they provide a group therapy dynamic, so that's the spirit in which I'll be looking at these songs. To listen to the songs directly on the artist's pages, you can go to the links in the video description below, and they are also included in my July 2025 playlists on YouTube and Spotify, also linked below. Let's get to it. The lyrical analysis of the song Therapy. In the song Therapy, the first verse does not pull any punches. From the start, it very bluntly tells the audience what the issue is. The line, "You've got all the answers whenever I'm hurting, but I feel like a project and not like a person," calls out the problematic habit of forgetting that people dealing with problems are still people, despite the projects associated with the problem they're dealing with. It is very easy to shift out of listening mode to attempted problem solving mode. The next lines, "I don't know why you try to fix me like I can be fixed overnight. Don't try, I'm fine. Don't tell me you understand," clearly communicates that this conversation is on the heels of the speaker feeling dismissed. If the answers in this verse imply that the fixes are fast or easy, then clearly there's a lack of understanding that no amount of claiming to understand will overcome. The first chorus reveals the specific attitude about the title. Quote, "I don't need therapy," end quote. In the first verse, you may have immediately felt like that the critique was related to therapy, so this would not be surprising. Or you may have thought that therapy would actually be what the speaker wants instead of the behaviors of the first verse. So this statement may be surprising. "I don't need therapy" is a provocative statement. It provokes enthusiasm from its target audience and potential rebuttal from an audience who has a different perspective of therapy. This song is an example of lyrics that purposefully speak to a limited audience without regard of trying to either be universally agreeable or vague enough to be broadly applicable. I think this is a refreshing feature in a lot of Citizen Soldier songs in a landscape where songs are often designed to be popular on general billboards. It is a daring move because you know from the start that you will be outright alienating several people who will not agree. And specifically on the topic of therapy, it puts the artist at risk of accusations that they are actually hurting its audience members who misinterpret the song as a reason not to get help. Side note, this brings up the question, what kind of responsibilities do artists have for how their creations impact their audience? I personally do not believe there's an unambiguous guideline for this. I do not think it is reasonable for artists to have to carry the emotional and cognitive load of their audience. People need to take accountability for their own actions. At the same time, artists are essentially in the business of communication via their art form, and so they bear a responsibility of conscientiousness in their communication, as is the responsibility of all communicators. This doesn't mean perfection or trying to cater to everyone else's preferences that prevents authentic art from ever happening. But when someone is a writer, a musician, a painter, a dancer, whatever the art is, I believe there should be consideration of how the art may be received as part of the process. Stick by what you want to say, but make sure it is truly what you want to say and how you want to say it. In turn, I actually think this facilitates more, not less authenticity in your art. It forces you to examine whether you achieved what you want from your art. Does the impact you've considered match the impact you want it to make within the scope of your vision? Have you caught an unintentional message that you want to adjust? Or maybe you found an unexpected message in your art that you like and can appreciate. The next lines in the chorus of the song showcase that it absolutely is possible and profound to stand your ground with your message while also showing sensitivity to the potential impacts of the song, another skill Citizen Soldier tends to execute expertly. Back to the chorus then. The next lines directly state what would be helpful instead of therapy. I need someone to hurt with me. I need someone to feel my pain and not just walk away. Those lines are so radically human. In fact, it harkens back to every single person's very first experience as human beings when we are wailing newborn infants, needing our guardians to feel our pain, to be moved to do something about it, to clean us, warm us, feed us, rather than walking away and abandoning us. Therapy is perhaps the answers in verse 1 that become the project, but this is a situation where a person needs a person, not a thing. Also, these lines are not to say that in therapy, therapists don't hurt with their clients or that they walk away when confronted with others' pain. Still, therapists have a clinical responsibility to provide evidence based care. The upside of this is that it limits the risks of certain types of abuses in the client practitioner relationship, and it does allow therapists to offer services that can be so helpful for so many people. However, a downside is that the science, or the application of the science, has not always caught up to what reality demands right now. Furthermore, as verse 1 states, people are not projects. There are aspects of human experience that science will never be able to capture, and therapy sessions are not always able to accommodate the fullness of that human experience. Moreover, therapists are often forced to provide therapy within the framework of business models that demand fulfillment of detached quantitative metrics, and for therapists to conduct care under highly limited parameters. This is usually not conducive to high quality, human centric care. The next lines continue filling out what are and are not needed. I don't need someone to preach to me, I just need a little empathy. Any one of us can slip into getting preachy to the people around us hurting. This line urges us to ask ourselves what will actually help the person, to have some empathy for them. The last lines of the chorus are a desperate request. Send me someone who will shut their mouth and listen when I say, I don't need therapy. They don't need well-intentioned friends or family or acquaintances or strangers trying to give them armchair therapy. They don't need therapeutic modalities that try to solve the problem right now. They need a person. They are a person who needs another person to listen for the sake of simply being present. The second verse continues to share what's not working. You want to help, but sometimes it's like I'm being lectured on my problems like I'm not already the expert. When you live with a problem for 24 hours a day, every day, there is an undeniable expertise that comes with this firsthand closeness to it. You don't need someone else who doesn't know nearly enough details to have any kind of informed insights to lecture you about it. When when we see our loved ones hurting, I know it can be so tempting to go into lecture mode, to want to just fix them so they feel better. Their hurt does hurt us, but it's ultimately their hurt, not ours. We need to show up in the ways we're able to, in the ways they need. And we need to recognize that there may be so much more to our loved ones, more than just what we see, even though they are our loved ones. Do your loved ones know every single little detail about you, every stormy thought, every pain, every joy, every hope? I'd venture to say, for most people, the answer is that probably most of your loved ones don't know all that information. The same is true in reverse. The verse then goes on to further clarify what needs to happen instead. Quote, I don't know why you try to fix me like you even know what it's like. I'm fine. Don't try. Just sit in my shadows with me. End quote. In actual day-to-day situations, when we're trying to have a candid conversation with someone who cares about us, about boundaries and needs, it can be really helpful when possible to not only share what the problem is, but also offer possible alternatives. Here, it's just sit in my shadows with me. Again, sometimes presence despite the pain, despite the shadows, despite the brokenness, is what's needed. The chorus comes next, and it reiterates the same message as the chorus did in the first appearance. The third and the last verse now provides very specific examples for the general parameters laid out in verse 2. Here we see both professional and attempted layman therapy are both under the umbrella of I don't need therapy. I don't need coping skills or cute cliches, no thoughts and prayers or time and space. For some people, there is definitely a time and place for coping skills like cognitive behavioral therapy or arts therapy or these other types of skills. There is a time and place for short phrases of encouragement or mantras. There is a time and place for expressing our well wishes to others. There is a time and place for giving time and space. But these are not for everyone and are not the case all the time. There is something missing in all this that the next line states outright. I need someone to prove I'm worth the pain. What proves to someone that they're worth the pain? This song argues, it seems to argue, that human presence does. Words, gifts, and services as ways to show care can be administered in a way that doesn't directly connect with a person. However, quality time and physical touch, presence, innately cannot be shared without physical presence or some kind of presence, making them amongst the most powerful ways to be present. There is zero room for a doubting mind about whether the person is actually invested in listening to and spending time with you when they're listening to you and spending time with you. The evidence is stronger with these ways of showing our care. I wonder also if therapy may not necessarily provide sufficient evidence for a few reasons. The first is therapy is, understandably, time constrained. The human connection doesn't end because the person in pain doesn't need it anymore. It ends because it's time for the person present, because it's time for the person present has to inherently end the appointment, a type of walking away. Another reason may be the cost. If you are paying for someone to listen to you, that may not feel like you are worth the time. Even if the therapist is truly invested, the financial factor, totally an understandable requirement in medical models, whether private or public, unfortunately can get in the way. When mentally struggling, even the possibility that maybe it's the money the therapist is getting paid that's making you worth their time, not who you are as a person, can niggle at you. It can start to unravel the proof. The next couple lines cover a couple more details. I don't need I've been there comparisons, a safety plan with medicine. Sometimes it helps to know and hear from someone who has been where we are. Sometimes, though, when someone needs to be heard, that means they need to be heard. Giving them those I've been there comparison forces them to become the person who has to hear, not the one who can be heard. We have to be careful not to insert ourselves in the center of the other person's narrative, especially when they need our presence where they are. The last issue, and the most professional therapy specific line in the song, points to the fact that sometimes medicating problems away isn't the solution. To be clear, medical safety plans can absolutely be critical for some people, and I personally don't think the song denies that at all. To me, these lyrics address the fact that not every internal crisis falls under the umbrella of needing medicated care. Sometimes they fall under the umbrella of the last line. I need someone to see my worst and stay. They need that proof. The last chorus changes a key line in an artistic move that I think is a brilliant conclusion to tie the lyrics together. The first two lines remain the same. I don't need therapy, I need someone to hurt with me. The next line, however, changes and speaks to the heart of the song, the heart of the problem, and the heart of the actions that provide the that will provide relief. I need someone to see me break and love me just the same. I need someone to see me break and love me just the same. I need a witness to all this awfulness and love me despite that. This is the kind of most ironclad proof, isn't it? To show someone all the reasons you think you're not worth it, and then they, fully informed with confidence that there isn't some piece of information they're missing that will make them change their mind, they still love you. This is anchoring. It offers hope in those shadows because someone on the outside of those problems is there waiting for you and with you despite those shadows. The chorus finishes us with the same line as before, and this is where I think Citizen Soldier song Therapy transitions really well into their song Alone with Myself, because this next song elaborates a little more on the value of that presence of someone else in the shadows. Lyrical analysis of Alone with Myself. The first verse in the song Alone with Myself echoes the I'm fine lines in Therapy. I'm all right, I'm okay, lying to myself just to make it through the day. Sometimes trying to convince ourselves that it's all right feels easier than handling the fallout of recognizing that we are not all right. The next lines speak directly to the fact that we touched on earlier, that what's on the outside does not necessarily match what's going on inside. Sun still shines on my face, but what's inside my head would scare the devil away. The refrain is so vulnerable. Feel like a burden asking you to stay, but I've been living in the darkest place. Feel like a burden asking you to stay, but will you stay? The lyricists put into words a thought that may be running through our minds, but we feel self-conscious about verbalizing it. It's hard to admit that you're at such a rock bottom, especially when you feel like it makes you a burden to others. I think this song is an example of how songs can inspire the audience to make a difficult action in real life feel more accessible, such as feeling like they may be able to ask someone they trust, if such a person exists for them, to stay with them. Letting ourselves admit the need is a prerequisite step to pursuing what we need. The chorus then explains this need. Don't leave me alone. Don't leave me alone. Don't leave me alone here with myself. There is almost a begging here. This is urgent, 'cause this ain't a home, this cage made of bones, and my head's a prison cell, every day a living hell that no one sees. Preempts sentiments. This preempts sentiments that we should always be able to do things ourselves, that relief is always going to be found from within ourselves. Sometimes we need outside help. Sometimes the parts of ourselves that we'd use to try to calm ourselves down, our bodies, this cage made of bones, and our minds, my head's a prison cell, don't feel trustworthy, and we need someone else to help take us out of that living misery. Hence, I would rather be with anyone but me. Don't leave me alone here with myself. Those lines it's one of the most important aspects of that presence that the song Therapy highlights. It's that someone else's presence helps counter the forces of the internal struggles. Verse 2 starts without pulling any punches, once again, about the reality of the situation. I'm a mess. I'm insane. Then this song utilizes more analogy than therapy, which included more literal imagery. Here we start seeing this analogy in the next lines. Every thought's a bullet blowing holes inside my brain. I suppress flash flood rain. Can't take another second 'cause the dam's about to break. Let's break that down. The thoughts are identified as a cause of damage. They are the bullets. This implies there is a something firing a gun. The lyricist will build on that later in verse 3. At the same time in the chorus as the bullets blowing holes, there are two other crises, a flash flood rain and a dam about to break. Now we have a possible picture of a perfect storm. One possible interpretation is that the bullets seem to be putting holes into a dam that is also about to be overwhelmed by a flash flood. Your brain is so thoroughly under attack, and what you're trying so hard to prevent from happening is looking more and more inevitable. That inevitability and inability for you to let your guard down because that rain is pressing down hard creates a situation that feels like that prison cell from the chorus. You're trapped in an impossible situation. The refrain and chorus repeat, emphasizing these points. Verse 3 mentions a new character here, the one who's probably holding the gun firing those bullets. Because I don't trust this monster not to leave a mark. I know it won't be gentle when my thoughts go dark. There's a monster inside the head. What is that monster? Here the lyricist lets the audience fill in the blanks. Perhaps it's the voices of others that we can't get out of our heads. Perhaps we are our own monsters. Perhaps it is an intrusive mental illness. The monster is whatever or whoever is stuck in your head when the thoughts go dark. And that monster knows exactly how and where to fire the bullets for maximum damage. It's focused on my fears. It knows them all by heart. The ones I keep the closest that leave the deepest scars. The song repeats by skipping over the appearance of the refrain and heads straight back to the chorus that ends with the big ask of this song: don't leave me here alone with myself. You need someone else to help fight those monsters. You need backup. You need allies. On to the personal application. Application of Citizen Soldier songs to complex chronic illness and medical trauma are largely self-explanatory, with lyrical focus on various mental health topics. The following is one type of application to my own personal experience. People navigating chronic illness are often dismissed, with symptoms written off as anxiety or depression. This is problematic on so many fronts. First off, it treats mental health diagnoses as throwaway diagnoses. It does so much damage in promoting stigmas about mental health that it's not a big deal, it's not that bad, everyone struggles sometimes. The reality is that mental illnesses are real, they can be devastating, and they require their own types of treatments. Mental health is also such a complex and nuanced topic, which is why mental health practitioners go through years of specialized professional training. Cardiologists wouldn't try to tell an immunologist what to do. Endocrinologists don't take charge over neurological issues, and by the same principle, mental health practitioners cover the domain of mental health. Writing off physical symptoms that are not understood also obstructs care for the physical illness, which can and do lead to medical emergencies. To illustrate, starting in my teens, doctors assumed my neurovascular symptoms were simply anxiety because I was a, quote, type A high-performing teenage girl. So, of course, that could be the only possible thing wrong with me. I was not a worthwhile person to be heard. I was a presumed profile to be fixed. It took years to get appropriate recognition, and therefore appropriate medical care, that my symptoms were associated with ischemic attacks and other physiologically mediated causes. I was sent away from emergency rooms still experiencing symptoms that should have been treated as the crises they were. I am forever grateful for doctors who do actually listen and those who have helped me navigate these. While the initial symptoms are not in the realm of mental illness for me, being on the receiving end of this kind of behavior causes its own mental struggle. I strongly resonate with the song Therapy on this front, because the medical trauma I have to confront due to this is not a matter for cliches or medications. I have been dehumanized and essentially abandoned by the medical industry so many times, and so human connection is an essential ingredient to the remedy. And from my experience of complex chronic illness, that medical trauma monster, akin to the one in Alone with Myself, is often made of the voices of medically negligent or unintentionally abusive, albeit I'm sure mostly well-intentioned, healthcare providers. Someone else's presence adds a voice that isn't theirs, or something different from my own internal voice that's been so distorted by the poor treatment that I can't always trust it to reflect my authentic self. That external presence from someone else trustworthy helps combat those thought bullets. For example, when you're thrown away so much, when you're gaslit into premises that physically suffering is normal, fears like whether the next step was worth taking can be a target for the deep scars. I don't know your specific situation, so I can't speak to the details of what you need to hear if you're experiencing something similar, but I want to add my voice against that type of monster. Just because someone else is an expert in something doesn't mean they have all the answers. You are an expert on you, and that means a lot. You deserve a team who collaborates with you so you can benefit from their expertise rather than being harmed by its misapplication. You are not a burden just because you carry burdens. We all carry burdens, and yours happens to be the ones you carry. You are not a burden just because you need accommodations. Everyone has needs, and yours just happen to be the ones they are. So, how about you? Where do these songs meet you in your walk through life? Farewell and fulfillment.